Morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, spilling across the kitchen counter where a half-finished cup of coffee sat beside an open book. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant laughter of my son, Daniel, drifting from upstairs. On the surface, everything in my life appeared ordinary, comfortable, predictable. I'd been married to David for 20 years. We had a rhythm: breakfast at 7, work by 8, dinner at 6. Weekends were filled with errands, laundry, and the occasional movie night where we sat together but rarely spoke. I used to think silence was a sign of peace. But lately, it felt heavier. David had been coming home later than usual. He'd offer soft excuses about late meetings and deadlines, and I'd nod, pretending not to notice the faint perfume that lingered on his shirt. Not mine, floral, unfamiliar. Still, I told myself stories. Maybe someone at the office wore strong perfume. Maybe he brushed against her by accident. Maybe it was nothing. That's the thing about denial, it's not always a lie. Sometimes, it's just love, dressed up as hope. Daniel had noticed too, though he didn't say much. He was 17, observant, quiet, kind. Lately, I'd catch him watching us at dinner, his eyes moving between me and his father, as if trying to decode something unspoken. I'd smile to reassure him, but even my smiles felt rehearsed. One Sunday evening, I set the table for 3, but only 2 of us ate. David had texted that he'd be late. I pushed his plate aside, untouched. Daniel asked if I was okay, and I lied. Just tired, I said. He didn't press further. Instead, he helped me clear the dishes in silence. When he went to bed, I stood alone in the kitchen, the ticking clock echoing louder than usual. I looked at the empty chair across from me and wondered when exactly absence had started to feel normal. As I turned off the lights, Daniel's voice broke the quiet. "Mom," he called softly from the hallway, "can we talk tomorrow?" "It's important." I smiled faintly. "Of course, sweetheart. Tomorrow." I didn't know it then, but tomorrow would change everything. Because sometimes, the people who surprise you most aren't strangers, they're the ones sitting right beside you. The days that followed blurred into one another, a haze of half-spoken words and restless nights. David came home at his usual time, smiling, asking about dinner as if nothing had changed. I played along, stirring soup that had long gone cold. Every movement felt mechanical, every laugh hollow. At night, when he slept, I lay awake, watching the shadows crawl across the ceiling. My mind replayed Daniel's words again and again. He was holding her hand. One afternoon, I saw David's phone light up on the counter. A name flashed across the screen: Elena. My hands trembled as I picked it up, but I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The truth was already sitting inside me, uninvited. That evening, as the sky darkened and rain began to fall, I decided I couldn't carry the silence anymore. He was reading in the living room when I walked in. "David," I said, my voice calm but steady. "Is there something you need to tell me?" He looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" I took a slow breath. "Daniel saw you with someone." He froze. His face changed, not from guilt, but from realization. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Finally, he sighed. It was a mistake. The word cut through me. Just one word, yet it held years of trust unraveling in a single breath. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just stood there, feeling something deep inside me fracture. Not loudly, but quietly, like glass cracking under pressure. "Does she make you happy?" I asked. He looked away. "It's not like that." But it was. It always is. I turned toward the window, watching the rain trace lines down the glass. "You should go," I whispered. "For tonight." When the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor, the sound of the rain filling the silence he left behind. I thought about Daniel, how he must have carried this truth alone, trying to protect me. And in that moment, I realized, my son hadn't just surprised me with a confession. He had saved me from living a lie I was too afraid to see. The next evening, Daniel waited for me at the dining table. His hands were clasped together, his leg bouncing nervously under the chair. I tried to lighten the mood with a joke about his expression, but his eyes stopped me. Mom, he said quietly, I need to ask you something. But, please don't get mad. My heart gave a small, uncertain flutter. Okay, I said, sitting down. I promise. He hesitated, then looked away. Can you not tell Dad that I saw him with someone? For a moment, I didn't understand. The words floated between us, slow and heavy, like they didn't want to land. Saw him with someone. I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. A woman. At that cafe near the library. They were sitting close, and he was holding her hand. The room suddenly felt smaller. The hum of the refrigerator disappeared. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, sharp and uneven. I tried to sound calm. Maybe it was a colleague. You know how friendly your dad can be. But Daniel's eyes filled with quiet certainty. It wasn't like that, Mom. Silence stretched between us, the kind that breaks something invisible. I wanted to protect him. To protect myself. To protect the illusion that our family was still whole. So I smiled, weakly, and reached for his hand. Thank you for telling me. You did the right thing. He nodded, relief flickering in his expression. But behind it, I saw guilt, the kind a child shouldn't carry. When he went upstairs, I sat alone, staring at the empty plates still on the table. The truth had entered our home quietly, wearing the voice of my son. And as I sat there in the dim light, I realized something. Sometimes betrayal doesn't arrive through confrontation. It slips in gently, through the lips of the person you love most, leaving you unsure of whether to grieve the lie, or the truth that replaced it. Weeks passed. The house felt emptier, but also quieter in a different way, peaceful, almost. David and I decided to separate. The conversations were civil, almost polite. We both knew the damage couldn't be undone. We still spoke about Daniel, his college plans, his exams, but not about us. That part of the story had ended. For the first time in years, I started rediscovering the small things I'd forgotten I loved. Early morning walks, reading by the window, the quiet hum of the world before it wakes. One morning, Daniel walked into the kitchen, his hair still messy from sleep. He sat across from me, just like his father used to, and said softly, I'm glad I told you, Mom. I looked at him, my heart tightening with both pride and sorrow. So am I said. You did the brave thing. Quote. He nodded, then smiled. A real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. After he left for school, I stood by the window, watching the sunlight spill over the backyard. The same light that once illuminated our breakfast table now felt different, gentler, warmer, forgiving. I thought about the night it all fell apart, and how somehow, from that moment, everything started to rebuild itself, not the marriage, but me. Healing, I realized, doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in quiet mornings, in honest words, in the simple courage to face what hurts. I whispered softly, to no one and everyone. When my son surprised me, I thought I was losing everything. But sometimes, the truth is just love, trying to find its way back home. Fade out. Visuals. Morning light through curtains. Steam rising from a coffee cup. A photograph of a mother and son, edges worn but still beautiful. The camera lingers, then fades to white.